Bro, get over yourself.
Look at Millard. Isn't he great? Oh, look how talented Millard is.
I think I'm gonna massacre this episode. Unhappy Campers is the 5th episode of Helluva Boss's 2nd season, and I didn't particularly care for it. Which, as the show's resident shill and clickbait whore, that is really saying something. Like, I don't know, gang. Well, this one has a ton of ideas that I like, from Millie fucking finally getting the spotlight, to the show exploring the toxic side of the M&M's relationship, not to mention Blitz's sister appearing, but for everything that it does right, for every idea that I love, the episode undercuts it with some stuff that I just cannot stand. Namely Moxxie, being at a level of petty that feels incredibly out of character. Or at least that's what I would have said if I had made this video right after my first watch. But after I took a breath, made some coffee, and gave it a couple rewatches, it finally sunk in what this episode was trying to do, and while it still has its issues, things aren't nearly as bad as I initially thought. So let's take a look at what the story gets right, what it's still iffy on, and break down how Moxxie, being a petty little bitch, is way more in character than we'd like to admit.
Now enough with this foreplay, where's Barb?
So the episode starts with me getting ready to cry for no reason, as what initially looked like Blitz breaking into Stolz's hospital room turned out just to be Barbie Wire's rehab center. This is an L, and I gave it to myself. Evidently though, this is a semi-regular occurrence, with the orderly being very familiar with Blitz, telling him to get the hell out, and that Barbie Wire was checked out months ago, which is an emotional nuke, as Blitz desperately wants to reconnect with his sister, but despite risking getting fisted by a fish to see her, she has zero interest in seeing him again, and in classic Blitz fashion, he refuses to take the hint, setting out on a John Wick-style quest to find her. But contrary to Twitter, this wasn't the focus of the episode. And that's okay, as yes, just because something isn't what you expected doesn't mean it's inherently bad. I know this is a very hard realization for people these days, but it's true. The real focus of the episode is on the M&Ms, who've taken a job to investigate a summer camp and to kill a murderer, with Blitz being so wrapped up in his own shit that he offhandedly puts Moxxie in charge of the hit, making this Moxxie's first time leading a mission, and it goes straight to his head.
Be the cleanest, most well-prepped, most surgical hit we've ever had.
Like, dude puts so much effort into making this a murder mystery, where they have disguises, backstories, they're gonna infiltrate the camp, find the killer, it's gonna be professional as hell. Then Millie spots the guy in like the first 20 seconds.
No, that's definitely him. That bag's full of money and drugs and what looks like a drill one would use to poke holes in a boat.
Moxxie is in shambles over this, beginning what is easily the most divisive part of this episode. Moxxie being the worst.
Been able to eliminate any suspects?
No, of course not. I can't get anything from anyone because they're too busy swooning over you.
Moxxie is awful in this episode. The second Millie figures out the mystery, Moxxie starts acting like a spoiled, petulant child. And I don't mean that in exaggeration, I mean he's acting like an actual child. He's acting like a kid who is mad that people aren't playing the game his way, forcing Millie to coddle him and go along with his bullshit. Only for him to get mad at her when his persona as a self-obsessed popular girl bombs and fails to win anybody over, while Millie's athletic ability and laid-back charisma rockets her to popular kid status. The episode sets up Moxxie to be the worst, and this just gets more egregious when he starts to lash out and blame Millie for his own failures, which after the show just love bombing us about how perfect and wholesome the M&Ms are, this is kind of a bitter pill to swallow, and I hate it. As we've seen Moxxie be petty and insecure before, it happens constantly, but to see him lash out at her feels weirdly vindictive. That said, I actually do think that this tracks. As Moxxie, he is insecure. He would walk on hot coals if it meant someone with authority just thought a little bit more of him. He has a massive chip on his shoulder that he feels like he just needs to prove himself. So for him to be in charge of a solo mission, he would obsess over getting it done right, proving that his way of doing things would work, that he is competent to everyone else and to himself. So this isn't just him being pedantic and being a dick to Millie. To him, doing the detective work, the infiltration, sticking to all of that, and making it work is a reflection of him. And if if they would just immediately just go with Millie's first guess, and it turned out to be right, it would invalidate his entire approach and render his entire tenure as a leader meaningless. In his mind, if he tells Blitz what happened, it won't prove that he did a good job, that he can be a leader. Right now, he's not worried that Millie is gonna steal his thunder, but Moxxie is just so self-obsessed with how people perceive him that he ignores how this is an achievement for Millie. And then when she gets popular, it only really just adds salt to the wound. But what makes this feel off, though, is how the episode starts with Moxxie wanting to prove himself to solve the case his way, only for him to devolve into being a petty little bitch. This dude is mad that a bunch of teenagers like Millie more than him, which honestly, and real thought, this feels more like Blitz behavior than it does Moxxie. But this weirdness is kind of mitigated by the fact that we've seen Moxxie do this before. We've seen him take a bunch of insecurities with a clear goal of what he wants to do, only to get swept up into a tangent that's not his real problem. Just look at Harvest Moon, where he feels insecure, shocker, and is trying to impress Millie's parents. However, this motivation and goal ends up devolving into a pissing contest where he gets his ass handed to him by Stryker. Moxxie's insecurities started as one thing, only for him to obsess over one petty facet till he loses sight of his original goal. It actually tracks that he would be jealous over some dumb teenagers liking his wife more than him, and he's so in his own head that he doesn't even realize what a pathetic douche he's being. How he's acting tracks, though I don't feel like it's executed perfectly. As part of the thing that kind of threw me was how he just started blaming Millie for his own failings. Now in the past, Moxxie does get down on himself, and he does become petty, but I feel like it's very rare that he blames others for his own mistakes. Like, we got Moxxie blaming Luna for him shooting a kid in the pilot, but that shit, as people just love to remind me when I use it for B-roll, the pilot isn't canon. It's in canonical limbo, so we don't know what parts of it still happened and what has been completely changed. So what we've seen from the series proper is that when Moxxie fucks up, he usually owns up to it. He'll make some excuses here and there, but this is the first time where we're in a situation and Moxxie is clearly the one at fault. That rather than just holding on to all those feelings and getting up in his own head, he starts blaming someone else. And that someone else is his fucking wife.
A job to do, and you're off dancing for views. Why does it matter so much how these yokels feel about you?
Making the whole situation extra galling and just a little bit harder to get behind, especially after all the times he's declared his love for her. Acknowledge that she's a badass, that she's stronger than him. So to have him be just so goddamn awful to her, it really rubs you the wrong way. But that is intentional. Though I do feel like it's gonna turn off a lot of people to this episode, as it feels out of left field, but if you do your homework, if you remember what's happened beforehand, you realize that it isn't. Not helping this is the fact that the episode is pretty much designed to have all of Moxxie's worst tendencies come out at once, with none of the sympathy that his usual pity parties get. But again, it's intentional, as for the first time, we are not seeing Moxxie from his own perspective. We are seeing him from Millie's.
And I had hoped that my husband would be there to support me half as much as I've supported him this week.
Now, I have been waiting for Millie to get a spotlight episode for a long time. So even when I was a little bit confused at Moxxie being the worst, seeing Millie take center stage is just so long overdue, and I love it. As while she has never been an awful character, she was criminally underutilized, feeling trapped as Moxxie's +1 in emotional support woman. And what makes this episode special to me is that it goes out of the way to address those issues, bring a brand new perspective as we kind of realize that Millie is constantly having to deal with Moxxie's low self-esteem. And that's just not like the meta of the show. That is something that she consciously has been having to deal with this episode showing us just how tough and frustrating it can be as we watch Millie bend over backwards to make Moxxie happy, where she decided to just keep playing along with Moxxie's little detective story, as she can see just how much it crushes spirits that she just figured it out. Millie may be a demon, but she is also a saint, as she constantly tiptoes around Moxxie's mood without saying F it and just getting the job done. And like, we love to watch these two together, to see them love and raise each other up. But when Millie is doing most of the raising, you realize in this episode that she's acting more like Moxxie's mom than his wife, and that's what makes his lashing out all the more frustrating. This whole episode is about deconstructing the M&Ms, and it is fascinating. And it's not just about Millie's relationship to Moxxie, as it puts us into her headspace on how Moxxie, sensitive artist, passionate, lacking in confidence, even in their great relationship, they still have their fights. Things aren't perfect because no one is. With this episode just giving us a little bit of Millie just by herself, as her becoming popular is a complete shock to Millie. Her I'm a Regular Guy song isn't just her singing in character. It's revealed that Millie doesn't particularly see herself as special or really worthy of this adoration, which is another thing where it's like, oh, that's interesting. That's like a new idea, I think. But wait, as in the previous episodes, it always has kind of felt like Millie has tons of confidence. She has always been the confident one to Millie's shy boy routine. She's always seemed like the most professional and competent of the imps, taking every situation in stride. But if you account for the fact that she was raised in Wrath, where everyone at some level, and especially in her family, are gung-ho fighters, Millie's skill set and everything that she does, it's kind of the standard, and you'd understand why she doesn't particularly feel special or really just used to being praised like this. While Moxie adores her, she spends most of her screen time raising him up and running his shit. So she's really just not used to being the center of this kind of attention, and her just feeling ordinary is an interesting scruple to her character. It really does add something to the everyone part of her character, as everyone else has baggage. She has had a relatively normal childhood, so she always feels like she is the most well-adjusted woman in the room. But again, in what makes this just a little bit weird the first time you watch it, you never really get this vibe from Millie. So you end up having two characters who, it makes sense. After a while you go, oh, that's it. Oh, no, I get it. But in the moment, it feels kind of less of a reveal and more like it's running counter what's been previously established. I got it. Eventually. And I just kind of feel like in general that this episode could have really benefited from having just another draft. As I kind of vibe with what it's trying to say, I'm just not sure if it's delivering it as well as it could. It's not bad, but it is a little bit clunky. Though something I do love that I feel like some people might miss is that the lesson here isn't that Moxie doesn't appreciate his wife. It's about pointing out the fact that maybe, just maybe, he takes her for granted sometimes and doesn't always appreciate all the work she does for him. And that really what he needs to do is to get over himself and start putting Millie's needs in front of his own. To let her do her own thing, which is the thematic through line that justifies Barbie Wire being in this episode. As Moxie learns the lesson, Blitz kind of doesn't.
Blitz! She's got a job now, a life. Don't fuck it up by finding her.
Fucking damn it! Thanks a lot, Blitzo. I'm out of a job. Next time you want to find me, Blitzo, don't.
Blitz has burnt every bridge that's older than 3 years old. Everyone from his past wants nothing to do with him, and he bitterly accepts that. Except for his sister Barbie Wire. Barbie is the only person that Blitz has gone out of his way to find and reconnect with, to at least try and repair this damaged relationship. That is, in spite of the fact that she has given him every indication that she doesn't want him in her life, refusing to see him when she was in rehab, which is probably why Blitz has constantly been breaking in. Amplifying this is the fact that when she got out, when she got a job, started a new life for herself, she never reached out to her brother, making her desire to not see him again unsaid but very clear. Yet in spite of that, Blitz is going on a tear, desperately looking for his sister, harassing her coworkers, going all the way to the human world just to see her again, only for her to tell him point blank that she's done, and that she will always be done, leading to the gut punch at the end where she rejects him, as Blitz has spent the entire episode putting his own need to see her and to get some kind of reconciliation, and putting it over her desire to start anew, unintentionally costing Barbie her job. Blitz doesn't really learn the lesson until it's too late, while Moxie watches all this drama and immediately just goes to tell Millie just how proud of her he is and all that she's accomplished.
I'm sorry I let you down.
Just don't do it again, dummy.
This episode, after you do a little bit of digging, has just so many great ideas to it. And overall, I think it is just okay.
I need medical attention! First aid is for winners!
Yeah, this is an episode where I think I love picking out the ideas and themes more than I do actually watching it. As I said, this feels like it could have used another draft. The comedy it's not bad, but it is a little bit lackluster than what we're used to. Anytime Moxie's doing his girl persona, it is intentionally meant to be annoying, and I am counting the clock till we're done with it. There are some funny gags here and there, but nothing that is amazing. But in general, it's just kind of to me. This episode drops a bomb on our perception of the M&Ms, but the lack of foreshadowing of, oh yeah, this is coming up, versus how ugly Moxie is being can easily throw you off if you're not on board with this direction. Moxie is at his worst and most insufferable to a point it's distracting. Once you realize what they're doing, it works, and you realize, oh no, that totally tracks. But in the moment, it is a lot, and the complete and utter lack of self-awareness is kind of crazy. So I end up just thinking that the episode is kind of just fine. The comedy isn't fully doing it for me. I don't really care for any of the musical choices that they did. Millie's song is fine, it's okay. The one at the ending, it's serviceable. And like at the end, Barbie telling Blitz off, it's a good moment, but the episode doesn't really earn this for me, as Blitz's B-plot of finding Barbie is so small that to then have this big moment of him putting himself out there only to get his heart stomped to pieces, it just feels like it happens. Thematically, it's there. But after the goofy final fight and the nerd getting his head exploded, it's the same damn problem where the show just feels like it's deciding, oh, we're doing this now. We're gonna have a sad moment, but it does so without detaching itself from the scene that just happened. So in the end, this episode just ends up being less than the sum of its parts. It's fine, it's not terrible, I'm just not in love with it. Happy we got to dive into Millie's character, this has been long overdue, but it is what it is. It's still more about them as a couple than her, but baby steps.
Really, sir?
No, not really. You're a fucking disgrace.
God damn.
And that's all for me. Let me know what you all thought of this episode. Like, share, and subscribe. Love you all. Peace out. And yes, Moxie is slaying the look, Millie is killing it, and the animation is great. But that all goes without saying.